Hello friends, welcome to the last video on this developer series blog, ride management application designed for trucks or service vehicles. So if you recall, in the very beginning, I've shown you a quick demo of the application and the data flow, how it works. In the second video, I've shown you how to set up your Flutter UI, data model, etc. In follow-up video, we set up multilingual and dark and light mode. And we also covered authentication method and CRUD operations. So in last video, please go through the last video if you haven't already, because that's very important video. You must watch that. In that video, we covered how to set up the CLP and ACP, that means class level permission and access control list at the backend level. And now this is the continuation of the last video. So what we are going to do, if you remember in the fifth video, what we did, I've shown you a code how to properly implement the CRUD operations. And when we are doing the CRUD operations, I always keep on referring that never ever call the backend API directly. Instead, use the cloud functions. So that's exactly what we are going to do in this video today. So if you recall, so in this particular example, when you are doing a set write, that means, I'm just updating a write collection on my database. So simply, we are just taking the parameter, building a dynamic query and doing a data.save. So this is the code we wrote last time, set settings, and simply if you go to the definition, set setting, what it does is accepts a user data model and it takes those data model, retrieve those values one at a time, and it builds a dynamic query and calls a data.save. And what data.save eventually what it does, it appends is add or update that data on the backend itself. So this is what we are going to refactor it. So let's call this a, so again, how do you refactor this? I want to do minimal changes because I have done a lot of coding here. So the way I'm going to refactor this code, all of the application like setter or write weight or bit page, everywhere else, I'm just going to simply update this name of the function. Everything else remains the same. And at the backend, because I have written all my backend related code at one place, that means in my artblock.dot file here I'm going to simply rewrite that function. So this function, this code, particular code set settings, what we wrote earlier, we are going to refactor this. This is not required anymore. So you can delete it, but I'm just going to update it, start slowly updating it one at a time. So let's call this a function called set user settings doc. Everything else remains the same on settings.dot page. Okay. Now I'm just going to re-author this function here, and it's going to be very, very simple. Okay. Now set user settings doc, similar to the set settings function, it accepts the user value as a user data model, and then once it gets the model, but instead of calling the Parse server SDK, Parse objects, here I'm just going to call the cloud function. So let's create a variable called function, which is of type Parse cloud function. Let's create another variable called params. Now params is a dynamic list of string and dynamic. Okay. Now, and you will see why I'm creating those two different functions here. Sorry, two different variables here. So now if model.objectId is equals to null, so it is equal to blank. So that means the user, this is an insert statement. It's not an update statement. So that's the only reason I'm doing it. Otherwise, is the same. So here I'm going to call a different functions called set settings user doc. Okay. Otherwise, I would have called update user settings. So now let's go update those parameters. So simply, what I'm going to do, I'm going to accumulate those parameters by reading those values which is coming from the model. So what params equals to username equals to model.username. Similarly, all other fields like user type, name, email, phone, etc. So now we have defined function, we have defined parameters. Inside the else statement is going to be similar, but instead of using set user setting, I'm going to call update user settings cloud function. So as you, again, just to recap, this is the same function. The only reason I have created that if else statement so that I can call the different cloud function accordingly. Now here, because the object ID does exist, it looks like an update statement. All right. So there is no absurd kind of statement, that means like insert or update statement in MongoDB or Parse framework here. So that's why there's a reason we are doing it like this. All right. So we have defined functions, we have defined parameters. Now simply you want to create a variable parse response, which is our parse response, and it's an async function. Simply I'm going to do function.execute object function and pass the parameters into this. And once you pass the response, if the response is successful, you want to return true, otherwise return false. See, nothing else changes in my code anywhere. So that's the I keep from the very beginning. Now we are getting out of the development phase and we are moving to the production phase. So that's how you switch. You refactor your code to start using most cloud functions or functionality. Now let's go to the backend here. So here is very, very simple. As you can see, I'm just going to go to the cloud code, and here you will see a structure like this. Now go to the main.js file here, and here we'll start writing Parse cloud functions. So first thing is, instead of defining the any user settings thing, first function you want to define set user ACLs. Now this is the function you define at the main dot level. So as soon as, and the reason why you want to do that, so you want to capture that user information. But if you remember in your settings collection, there was a special field called user, which was a pointer to the user class. So here basically this is what, how you set up the pointer and how you insert values to the fields which are of type pointer. So simply what I'm going to do, current user equals to request.user, and once you get that user, you set the ACL. So any collection, and this is going to serve for entire collections. So any collections you set up, if you want to update the user value, what it will do, because it's a pointer, this code is going to set up that pointer to the value associated with your user ID. So basically return current user.save, and we want to pass couple of, sorry, so hard to type on this editor here, current user.save, and inside that save, let's make it an await because it's an async function. So return await current user.save, and inside that save I want to pass null and the user master key equals to true. All right, so that's how it knows that, and it's going to set up that user pointer to your user ID. Now let's go write code for code to update user settings. So before we write the set settings, let's go create the get method here. So first parse.cloud.function, and I'm going to create a get function. So define get user doc. So get user settings doc, and again it's an async function. It takes a request. So request as a parameter here, and then let's go put some curly braces, and here let's go get the current user first. So either you can copy paste this thing, let current user equals to request.user, and then here you want to build a query. So let's go create that parse object. Say let query equals to new parse.query, and here I'm going to pass that name of the collection, query settings. Now you can so once you have defined that query query instance here, okay, so parse.query, now query is the instance here. Now you can call the you can append to that query. So query dot, so for example query equals to, sorry again it's so hard to type here, so query dot equal to, and then equal to takes two parameters here. So first the field you want to compare, so query dot equal to, let's say user, and the second the value, so current user. Okay, again user is a pointer here, so that's how it retrieves the value which are only created or updated or by your user ID. So that's how that's what the whole point of using that user pointer class. And then you want to limit the results to 1 because you just want to see your own record here. All right, so similarly let's go so once you have the results of, sorry, you have to get the results and then you have to pass the results back to the users. So if results.length equals to 0 or there's an error, you want to throw an error, otherwise you return the results back to the user. All right, so similar to get user using doc, very similarly you can create the other two functions, say set user settings and update user settings. So instead I'm just going to say parse.cloud.define cloud.define, and let's say set user setting doc, settings doc, and I'm going to say it's an async request. Let's go take the request. The same thing again, once you get the request, you can first get the current user, which is request.user is a parameter here. Now because remember these methods you are accepting the parameters which is coming from the backend. So here again same thing, I'm just going to say request.params, and then you capture those parameters which is defined from your front-end API here. And the only thing what you do want here, you want to create a new object here. So new to do equals to, and you want to call that say parse.object.settings object, which is the collection name settings here, and then you simply say todo.save, and once you set it up you just say todo.save. So it looks long, But actually it is not. Once you write that function, all we are doing, we are just doing the parameters. We are capturing the parameters one at a time, storing them into the individual values, and then we are setting those individual values to the parse object what we just created. Okay. So and here the only difference from set method and update method is update methods has one extra object ID. Because update, you can't do an update if you don't know the record ID. So object ID is the record ID. So that's the only difference from user settings and set user settings. So that's how you define actually, first of all, please don't forget to create the user ACL method here. And once you have created that, then you can define your get method, getter, setters, and updaters, all of those methods here. All right, so that's all I wanted to cover in this video today. And what I will do, if you have any issues, please open issue log at my GitHub repository. I'll be happy to help you out. Okay, and then you will find all of this updated code in my GitHub repository. That's all I wanted to cover in this video, in this series of the blog. If you, again, this is a very basic entry level application, but sky is the limit. You can just, this is a community project. You can update it and create it, make it as complex as you want. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching.